The Great Steppe, millenniums of events, hundreds of nomadic tribes and people. They lived, worked, made discoveries, conquered large tracts of lands, and left us some mysteries. To learn more about it, watch the project called Enigma of the Great Steppe. On today's program, secret ingredient of Almaty Apor. Fruit sent with astronauts to space. Senator, apple, and dinosaurs. Today we will talk about a very ancient subject which appeared on the third day after the world creation, according to legend. This subject caused disputes between the gods, accelerated scientific discoveries, and was considered a tempting symbol of prohibition at different periods of time. It is an apple. Statistically, each person on Earth eats from 8 to 20 kilograms of this fruit annually, depending on the region of residence. But not everyone can boast fruits with 700 to 800 grams weight and a pleasant smell. Only one kind of apple, Almaty Apor, has such features. Who linked the apples to the opera? When was this kind of apple mentioned for the first time? And where does its name come from? 2009. In celebration of the Capital Day, one of the three great tenors, the Spanish opera singer Placido Domingo, arrived in Astana. They say that he has already heard about the delicious taste qualities of Kazakh Apor apples. He only needed to ensure that this rumor is true. The basket of fragrant fruits was waiting in the hotel room of the artist. It was sympathy, with the first bite out. The legendary tenor promised the organizers to eat exclusively apples during all 3 days of his stay in Astana.
Бывает, ты съешь яблоко, и тебе после него хочется пить. Тебе что-то хочется перекусить.
Sometimes you eat an apple and then you want to drink. You want to eat because it has a taste which causes extra appetite. But a Apor apple is a different one. You just eat it. You do not need to make an apple pie or something else. I think this apple is not good to make an apple pie, but it's better to have a snack with this apple. It contains a lot of useful microelements. By the way, some believe that Kazakh apples are as famous in pomology, a branch of botany that studies fruit and berry plants, as opera and dramatic art. Of course, this remains an open question in contrast to the time of appearance of these two subjects. Here, Apor apple fully wins. The first opera in the history of mankind is considered opera Daphne of the Italian composer Jacopo Peri, on the libretto of Ottavio Rinuccini. The first production of this opera dates back to the beginning of 1598. But the earliest mention of Apor apple already was in the 12th century, in 1175 to be more precise. There is information in the monastic archives of this period about apples brought to Poland from the Ottoman Empire, whose government was called Porta in diplomacy. Perhaps this gave to the name Apor apple, although there is a more romantic version.
Когда-то в начале 20 века, может быть, даже в конце 19 века.
In the beginning of the 20th century, or maybe at the end of the 19th, our plant breeders who developed a Apor kind of apple visited an exhibition of apples in France. This apple was at the entrance to the exhibition, and everyone liked this apple. People asked, "Where is this apple?" And they answered, "It's near the door." And since in France the language is French, this answer sounded like l'Apor. This is the legend how this apple was named Apor. I cannot say surely whether it is true or not.
Насколько она правдива, я не могу сказать.
It should be noted that the orchids of Apor have long bloomed in the southern and middle regions of Russia. People called these apples Alexandrian in honor of the Russian Emperor Alexander I. But experts say it is very difficult to determine its so-called ethnic origin. It is not a secret that we owe the appearance of the first apple seedlings in our country to Yegor Redko. Was his arrival in Verny, an old name of Almaty, just a coincidence or a scheduled action? What is the secret ingredient that turned Verny Apor into a winner of the world exhibitions? And what did Kennedy say about this apple? (1865). The family of Yegor Redko, a migrant from the Ostrogorsky district of the Voronezh province, arrived in Verny. He received an order from the emperor to travel to faraway Kazakhstan to plant gardens in the young settlement, Verny, and help its locals to master this craft. Redko put family belongings and seedlings of apor in the ox cart. This apple was an unremarkable kind in his native region. It was a long journey, and Redko carefully wrapped the roots in a wet fabric.
Многие переселенцы переселились сюда, и, естественно, это было нормально, когда ты с собой везешь какие-то...
Many newcomers moved here, and it was normal when they brought some kind of seedlings with themselves to grow here.
На тот момент, который...
As far as I know, that kind of apple which Redko brought here at that time was not famous and remarkable for his region.
Вот я углублялся в историю, говорят, что этот сорт не являлся...
It was a usual sort of apor, and it was not a big one.
То есть обычный, сорт апорта, причем не крупный, как оказалось.
The city authorities provided Redko with lands for the cultivation of fruit trees and shrubs. Since those times, this area, east part of Dostik Avenue, is known to locals as Kompot District. The reason of this name are the old names of the streets: Grusheva, Pear, Vishneva, Cherry, Tenistaya, Shady, and others. By the way, Yegor Redko's house is still located at its former place on Kabanbai Batir Street behind the Pugasov Bridge. Black gold of Karaganda is loaded during days and nights. The oil rigs are in Embi town, and oil is extracted. Rice is grown in Karmakshi steppe. Gardens bloom in Alatau. Delicious apples of Alma-Ata are grown. Yegor Redko's decision to plant the seedlings of apor with wild apple trees was fundamental in all sense. The most famous of the wild apple trees is named after the outstanding St. Petersburg scientist, pharmacist, and botanist of German origin, Johann Sievers. Such viable rootstock allowed apor to reveal its best taste qualities. Soon, the Redkov apple became popular among people, and the generous gardener shared seedlings with neighbors and locals of the village. People began to plant fragrant orchards of apor apple on the slopes of mountains.
Я лично застал еще апорт посадки.
I myself saw apor of 1895 year.
Улица Фурмана.
There were orchards of apple trees at the end of Furmanova Street. There also were orchards near the Alma-Ata Gorge. Now there are different cafes. There were apor trees of 1905 year. So apor trees have been grown here for a long time. This apple found its own place, its own landscape.
Свою микрозону, ландшафт свой нашел.
The more the apple orchards of the Trans-Ili and Jungar Alatau gave big, rooty fruits, the more the rumor about Verny apor spread.
Вывозили, конечно, особенно...
Of course, apor was exported, especially to the center, to Moscow. We had Alatau State Farm, where agricultural machinery was maintained at a high level. In the Shymkent region, there was Michurin State Farm. Very tasty, good apples were grown there.
Хорошие яблоки выращивали.
In 1908, foreign experts were amazed by the phenomenal Turkestan fruits at the Mannheim International Exhibition held in southwest Germany. Apor apples received the highest grade. The size, taste, and color of apples elicited general enthusiasm. Huge apor apples presented by Verny Horticulture School made a splash at the Mannheim International Exhibition of Fruit Agriculture held in Germany. Insights to the historical retrospective split after that moment. Some people believe that neither the Europeans nor the Americans, despite numerous attempts, managed to grow a apor apple like Verny apor.
Многие говорят, что причиной тому это такие уникальные...
Many say that the reason for this is the unique properties of soil and climate of Verny.
Климат очень жаркое лето.
That is, Verny has very sharp continental climate, very hot summer and frosty winter.
период лета созревания.
At the time apples are ripening, the temperature is quite high in the foothill areas. But due to a breeze from the mountain canyons, this contrast gave a poor apple such amazing taste qualities.
Там удивительные вкусовые качества.
Others, adherents of the fact that the seedlings of a poor apple could be grown with proper care in European soil, after a time generously presented their sweet fruit with delicious smell.
Я разочарую, может, многих. Он также себя прекрасно вел.
I can disappoint many people. This apple was grown well in the late 19th, early 20th century in other countries, in Germany, Austria, Italy, and Canada, the foothills. In general, it was grown in skiing areas.
Катаются на лыжах, как бы. Он там прижился, выращивался. И
Basically, this kind of apple lost its position by the 20s because it was second to other kinds of apples which appeared at that time, kind of apple called Golden Delicious.
уступал многим сортам яблок, которые
A
появились
bit later, Star Crimson, a kind, appeared.
в Golden Delicious золотого.
In general, there were a lot of kinds which surpassed the variety of economic useful qualities of the Apor apple.
Делили по комплексу хозяйственно полезных признаков сорт.
There is such a saying in fruit agriculture as a good apple and a bad kind.
Хорошее яблоко.
This explains everything.
Этим все сказано.
However, the highest grade of world leaders was given to the Verney Apor. For example, U.S. Senator Edward Kennedy, brother of U.S. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, after having tried Apor during his visit to Almaty in 1972, said, "I traveled almost all over the world, but I have never eaten such delicious apples." And yet the history of Kazakhstani Apor apple would not be so colorful and dynamic without the legendary Sievers apple tree. Is it true that this wild apple existed at a time when the dinosaurs roamed? How did the Silk Road influence the development of horticulture? And why do the astronauts take only these fruits when they leave to space? Current days. The markets are full with cheap agricultural products imported from China. The original quality of vegetables and fruits is gradually replaced by synthetics. This is fraught with the most negative consequences because soon we can lose one of the five senses. Taste.
Вообще апорт нужно постоянно, каждые, там, грубо говоря, 50 лет.
In general, every 50 years, a pore should be selected or replanted.
То есть, чтобы он имел такой же...
That is, it must be constantly regenerated so that it could have the same size, smell, and taste.
Нужно постоянно перерождать и высаживать новые деревья.
This axiom is applicable to any species of fruit trees. Therefore, countries that grow their own varieties of apples, the United States, Britain, Brazil, Canada, and many others, are puzzled by genetic renewal of apples. In search of the chromosome, the progenitor of the best apple species, scientists of the world began to study the ways of spreading of apple kinds. Researchers led them to Kazakhstan.
Из Германии были туристы, они просто были в восторге.
Tourists arrived from Germany. In the beginning, they were delighted not because we have orchards here, orchards of Apor, pears and other fruits, but because wild apples grow here.
Для того, что у нас растут дикие яблоки. То есть вот они уходили в предгорье.
They went to the foothills to walk and took photos with wild apples, took apples and tried to take stems of these trees.
Плоды старались черенки себе отрезать. Потому что
They said that they do not have such trees in Germany.
это
It is something beyond understanding.
то, что вырастить у них
In
сам.
Germany, they have to close and make special conditions to grow such gardens or an apple tree. Only after that it grows.
Экосистемой, чтобы оно там проросло, набралось сил.
Here, apple trees grow in such conditions, which are considered not so comfortable.
В комфортных условиях растут яблоки и дают свои плоды.
This is not an exaggeration. Apple, named after Johann Sievers, is really natural phenomenon. After the opening of the Iron Curtain, foreign eco-tourists and scientists started visiting the Kazakhstani mountains. They called the beauty which they saw Eden, a paradise.
У нас реликтовые.
We have relic orchards. Wild fruit trees grow in the Jungarian Alatau, Trans-Ili, and western Tian Shan mountains.
В западном Тяньшане И внимание
The attention of the entire scientific world and genetics is drawn precisely to these wild-growing trees.
этими нашими дикоплодовыми. Кстати, яблоня Сиверса не только
By the way, the apple tree of Sievers is growing not only in the mountains of Kazakhstan, but also in China. Some seedlings were taken from here and planted in China, and it has already given some good results.
уже определенные успехи приносит.
In 2000, by means of expensive analysis and examinations, it was possible to establish that the apple tree of Sievers is really the progenitor of most apple kinds. American scientists tested wild apples in 23 laboratories and found out that it does not freeze in the cold, withstands heat well, and struggles with diseases on its own. But the most surprising is that its age is estimated in millions of years. This tree existed since prehistoric tribes roamed along the vast steppes and foothills of present-day West Asia. The apple tree of Sievers appeared in Europe much later, at the time of Alexander the Great. In the European part of Russia, it appeared even later, during the times of Kievan Rus. Perhaps Sievers' apple tree appeared much earlier in the era of dinosaurs. For example, in the Biological Dictionary of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR, the time of its origin is mentioned as 165 million years ago. Some scientists believe that these species of wild apple appeared 80 million years ago. It is the Cretaceous period, the last period of the Mesozoic era, the time when giant lizards presided over Earth and pterodactyls flew in the sky. An interesting fact, Sievers' apple tree can live up to 300 years, just like some dinosaurs. Like the largest reptiles in their time, today a poor apple is in danger of extinction.
Видимо, люди приезжают с тех регионов, где там действительно
Well, probably tourists come from those regions where wild and fruit trees grow in limited numbers, and we have these trees in abundance.
в ограниченном количестве имеются. Ну, а плодовые тем
But of course, we should take care of them and save these species.
в избытке, я думаю.
Our government implements many programs on the conservation and use of the genetic fund of this valuable kind of apple.
По использованию сейчас генофонда вот этого центра.
Any school child can answer the question of how Sievers' apples crossed the ocean and appeared on the other side of the planet. The Silk Road, with the help of which there was an exchange of goods and cultures between different people, played a key role here. The apple tree spread to the east and west. But it survived and started growing thanks to the efforts of generations of gardeners. After all, to grow a tree is as complex task as to bring up a child.
Деятельность по сохранению вида достаточно сложная в связи с
The
тем,
conservation of the species is a very complicated task because this process does not take a year, 2 or 3, and even not 5 years. About 10 years are needed for a tree to generously offer fruits after you plant it. That is, only after 8 to 10 years, we can understand what we have done there and what we got.
что мы там наделали.
Let's say if we plant a few trees today and in 10 years we will see what kind of trees and we'll have to look after them for a certain period so that they grow in the way we like.
Увидим какие-то деревья, и в течение там какого-то периода мы должны за ними ухаживать так, чтобы они, грубо говоря, получались такими, какими мы их хотим видеть.
It would be fair to say that the current Apor apple is different from its predecessor, which grew 30 or 40 years ago. The fruits became smaller, although their smell still fills the whole space around. Apples got negative impact due to a number of reasons. It is the violation of the ecosystem, the harsh winters of the middle of the last century, and the consequences of the war. The gardens were cut down for heating. But according to experts, the main source of problems is caused by the instability of this kind to diseases.
Мы наблюдаем сегодня проблему с тем, что современные
Today, we have a problem. Current diseases have a very strong influence on the Apor apple.
очень сильно имеют свое влияние. То есть
That is, Apor apple is not protected from many modern strains, which are easily transmitted on the territory of its growth.
передаются на территории там произрастания.
Последняя эпифитотия, ну вот,
And here is current infectious disease, bacterial blast, which started to eradicate this kind of apple.
как бы искоренять начал, болеет повсеместно.
Despite the measures taken, apple got this disease.
Наука все-таки длительный.
But scientists worked a lot to find out the treatment. They studied a lot of things, but still this disease exists.
Изучали, но он все-таки не откликнулся, я бы так сказал.
Another difficulty with the restoration of the former greatness of a poor apple is that it is practically impossible to find raw materials of good quality, in this case, strong and healthy seedlings of this kind. Only after 5 years after seedling planting you can understand it is true a poor apple or a pig in a poke. Such experiments demand considerable financial and time costs, but true connoisseurs of this favorite fruit are ready to do everything to get this apple to grow.
Мы понимаем, что это погибающий вид сорт,
We
который...
understand that this kind is in danger of extinction. Probably soon this kind of apple will be in the red list. We must try to avoid it as soon as possible.
Как можно сильнее избежать.
Incidentally, agronomists, unlike others, distinguish Alexandrian and blood red kinds of apple. It turns out that they're all clones of one kind.
Сейчас кроваво-красного стало меньше.
Yes, now blood red kind can be met very rare.
И чуть
It
покислее.
is a bit smaller in size and a bit sour clone of the Apor apple.
Кстати,
In the Institute of Horticulture, we chose kinds of Apor with deviations, harvested shoots, later increased their number, grew saplings, and observed them.
нажали
There are several kinds that have the most positive signs of this kind.
форм, которые имеют наиболее положительные признаки этого сорта.
Many people are worried about the question, will these huge and delicious fruits of Apor, which are remembered by our grandparents with warmth and nostalgia, appear again at grocery stores? In theory, it is possible, but from a practical point of view, it is a very complex, laborious work.
Плоды крупные бывают, с голову младенца.
The fruits can be huge, with weight up to a kilogram.
Что еще? До килограмма.
Yes, it's quite possible, but this does not mean that all fruits are the same.
Не значит, что все такие плоды. То есть
This
это
can be achieved, and it is quite realistic. This should be done in a comprehensive solution. Feeding, proper pruning, care and protection from pests, both insects and various viruses.
как
It
насекомых.
should be done with increasing efforts.
То есть, прям такая полномерная работа.
By the way, the first elected president of the United States, George Washington, loved to prune apple trees in his spare time. And this fruit is an indispensable companion during business trips for the astronauts of all over the world. It turned out that only apples withstand cosmetic speeds. Lemons or oranges reaching the stratosphere are scattered into small pieces. Probably the astronauts looking at apple trees remember Earth with warmth and some longing. Just like we, the Kazakhs, remember the fragrant orchards of Apor apple. But experts say there's no reason to get upset about the past. Today, science is advanced and there are many new, stable, and very delicious kinds of apple, and Verni Apor will always be our pride.
Он все-таки повышенной конкурентоспособностью обладал в то время.
At that time, Apor apple had increased competitiveness. It was the best apple.
Ну, потом, в принципе, Казахстан...
Kazakhstan was part of the Soviet Union, and we were like a closed country.
И вот эта глобализация, которая...
This globalization, which is already in our country, came later to us. We began to introduce these kinds of global significance later. Homology, a branch of botany which studies varieties of apple and other fruits, says that Apor has 4.1 score in taste. And, for example, kind of apple, Golden Delicious, has a 4.5 to 4.7. Other kinds even have a score of 5.
4,5, 4,7, другие сорта есть 5, имеют оценку.
According to legend, the ancient Greek goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite argued about who should own an apple with the inscription, the most beautiful. The mythical Hercules, in his most difficult 12th labor, had to hold up the heavens on his shoulders to get 3 golden apples of the Hesperides. The English physicist, mathematician Isaac Newton published the law of gravity only after 2 decades after an apple fell on his head. We live in a region rich and generous with gifts of nature, which we can simply enjoy. The shawl is considered a symbol of Orenburg. A cake is a symbol of Tula. The symbol of Almaty is the Vernia Por. The homeland of Siever's apple is Central Asia, that is, the Great Steppe.